So now you're in for a treat. I think it's time to turn it over to an instructor in the iSchool, Jeff Salter. So thank you all, appreciate it.
Wow. I get the honor to introduce Eddie Doyle, our keynote speaker for tonight. Eddie is a security strategist, cyber evangelist with Check Point Software Technologies. Eddie is a cybersecurity expert who has been leading enterprise organizations and corporate leaders to solve their cybersecurity challenges in an engaging manner. Eddie is a true champion for his customers, ensuring their needs are met and guiding them to fruition through his exceptional leadership skills. He has been instrumental in making cyber a profit center for business and to guide all department leaders to own their corporate risk. Apart from his professional achievements, Eddie also supports the Secure Academy and makes himself available to our students. He champions them to succeed in the field of cybersecurity and is committed to developing the next generation of cybersecurity professionals. His dedication to the industry and his passion for mentoring and coaching others is truly commendable. So please join me in welcoming Mr. Eddie Doyle.
Thank you so much. So we are going to start in the 19th century with Leo Tolstoy, a true man of letters, a literary giant amongst us. And he wrote a short essay called The Three Questions. Good. Nobody's nodding. Right? You want to be an original. A crowd like this of academics, that's going to be tough. So the three questions goes like this. There was once a young villager who was contemplating the secrets to life success. Now, of all the many varied techniques that there are for accomplishing one's goals, he realized that it all boiled down to three simple questions. When is the most important time to engage in any endeavor? Surely if he knew that, his probabilities of success would be heightened. Who is the most important person to listen to, and whom should he avoid? And what is the right thing to do in any given situation? So, the young man went to all his friends and villagers and neighbors and asked his three questions. When is the most important time? Who is the most important one? And what is the right thing to do? So in answer to his first question, all of his friends broke out important timetables, spreadsheets, and management projects, and they said there's a right time and a place for everything. Don't be too early, don't be too late. Other friends said, well, you can't do everything yourself, so you need a team to help you expand time. The man thought about the answers, and while he understood his friends were trying to do good, none of them really sat well in his heart. So he moved on to his second question, who is the most important one? Well, some people said, well, it's the village nobles and wise council of elders. Others said, clearly, it's the medicine team. Yet others said, it's the priests. And others said, well, war is inevitable, so military leaders. Again, the answers were good, but didn't really anchor in his heart and give him a definitive response. So he asked his final question. What is the most important thing to do? Quickly, simultaneously, all his friends answered, all with enthusiasm for their own individual responses, which differed from everybody's. Some said, well, of course, the scientific method must be applied to everything. Look what the Great Renaissance has done. We should adopt science and the scientific method to everything. Others said, well, actually, no. It's that military strategy. You need discipline and you need absolute control. And others said, no. Spirituality is everyone's highest calling. The young man, a little disappointed, took a walk in the woods. where he bumped into the village recluse, living in her cottage, digging vegetable rows in her garden. He stopped for a while and spoke to the old lady. And seeing that digging was difficult for her, he helped her with her garden. As he was digging, they got to chatting, and he asked about his 3 questions. Who is the most important one? When is the right time? And what is the right thing to do? Just then, both of them heard a cry for help. A young girl jogging nearby had fallen and twisted her ankle, so quickly the young man and old woman ran and helped her. They bandaged up her ankle and they took her home. Just as they were about to part ways, the man expressed one final time how disappointed he was not to have learned the answers to his questions. But you did answer them, the old lady said. Earlier, if you had not stopped to speak with me and help me with my garden, you wouldn't have heard the girl's cries for help. So, helping me with my garden and the time you spent doing that was the most important thing to do. And I was the most important one at that time. While you were digging the garden and running to help the girl, the most important time was the time you spent helping her. The most important thing to do was to help her, and the most important one at the time was the jogger. So remember then, there is only one important time, and that time is now. The most important person is always the one you are with, and the most important thing to do is to do good. These are the secrets to life. And deans, directors, academics, librarians, ladies and gentlemen, I introduce this story to honor you. Because without you, without the academics, without Tolstoy, we wouldn't have the answers to these massive questions about when we should do things. If it wasn't for people who would actually sit down and think, we would not advance our species forward. As Newton said, if I have gone further than others, it is because I stand upon the shoulders of giants, as we all do today, as I stand upon your shoulders. And hopefully, my shoulders are broad enough for you to stand on today and learn a little bit about cybersecurity. And here's the interesting thing. We are already in this business together. You, as information specialists, you, the ones that deliver these gems like Tolstoy, whatever it is you do, whatever cog and wheel that you participate in, you are part of the cybersecurity dynamic because you guard precious information. And that's what we do in cybersecurity. And so, if you think about this in terms of a really short history of humanity, the last 400 years being the most consequential for us since the Great Renaissance. 1440, Gutenberg invents the printing press. 200 years later, after thousands of years of dark ages, we get the Great Renaissance. After just 200 years of the mass distribution of knowledge, the first time on our planet that we ever had the mass distribution of knowledge. I've been, by the way, and seen a Gutenberg, an original Gutenberg printing press made out of wood. It's incredible. And so we were able, Thomas Paine's pamphlet, right? Common sense. If it wasn't for the Gutenberg printing press, there wouldn't be a United States of America. How's that for knowledge being spread, right? That was a decisive piece of paper that takes knowledge from one person to another. And the internet is the printing press on steroids. That's it, right? This is what we do. So the business that we're in as cogs in the wheel is to protect that data. Now, so let me give you an example of how far data's gone from Thomas Paine's pamphlet to today. Anybody heard of Axie Infinity? It is a Web3 game. I'm hoping not, because I'm going to introduce you to something amazing. Now listen to this. This is the first time in history, and we cracked this actually a few years ago. Most people still don't know. Like, think of blockchain this way. Blockchain is eating the internet, and you know how big the internet is. Just think of blockchain that way. So Axie Infinity is brilliant. For the first time in human history, people are playing a game and earning fiat money, actual money, from playing a game called Axie Infinity. Now, they're a little bit of trouble lately. And that's not to be judged because they're breaking ground on something entirely new. The idea is this. Getting to the game is difficult. You have to go, it's on the Ethereum blockchain. And once you get there, you need some technical ability. Playing the game, it looks a little bit like Pokemon. It's not something that I think at all would interest anyone. And yet, here this thing is. It's a bit like Angry Birds, right? Although I must admit, I really liked Angry Birds. That was cool. And so you've got these little creatures and you do something. I actually don't even know what you do. But as you play the game, what you're doing is you're building into the game. Very similar to Minecraft that my kids always play, right? Minecraft. So as you're building additional characters and things, skins, right, for people to wear as their little avatar. And so then you can sell them on their store. Other people will buy them, which converts to fiat money on the Ethereum blockchain. So now what you've got is kids in sub-Saharan Africa and India playing games on a cell phone, earning money. Now that's interesting. That is very interesting to me because for the first time we're taking data, information science, and we're converting it into something you can eat. Right? Right. So, this company lately, they got into some financial trouble. I hope they can dig themselves out of it. They're being criticized right now. It doesn't matter, they're trailblazers. The crypto world is a crazy world, so let's let them get on with it. But if they can fix that, that will be interesting to me because how can you then create something which will allow kids in any part of the world with a cell phone to contribute a data set and get paid? So now all of a sudden you've got mathematicians that wouldn't have the opportunity to come to university that can contribute their knowledge through a phone and earn money. So that's the business of information science and information protection. That's right on the cutting edge of what it is you do. You actually lay cogs in the wheel. You lay a foundation for these things to happen. Who these geniuses are, and they're all in Puerto Rico, right, for taxes, and these people are making a fortune, but they're all over there. Who these people are all PhD graduates of these kinds of programs, right? This is the facilitation. So this is what you're involved in as a cog in the wheel. Okay, I didn't actually look at my watch, so somebody needs to give me a 10-minute and because apparently you open up to a Q&A. I'm very happy to do it, but I've got so much to say, so I want somebody to keep me honest on the timing. Okay, wonderful. So let's just jump straight into threat actors. We don't call them hackers. Somebody who hacks is somebody who figures out a system. Hey, I'm going to give you a nice system for a little bit of health. Why not? Sidebar. So I work from home, and oftentimes I don't go to the gym. In fact, I should put it the other way around. I rarely go to the gym. That made it sound good the first way I put that, didn't it? Oftentimes I don't go to the gym. I rarely go to the gym. So what I've done is I bought a big heavy medicine ball, this 50-pound ball. I've got stretchy bands and things. And here's the hack. I'm hacking because I know I don't want to spend time going to the gym. So I have to introduce exercise into my lifestyle. This ball sits in the way, and every time I walk past it through the doorway to my office, which is a lot, to the kitchen to get a cup of coffee, I have to pick up this ball and do something. Some kind of press, anything, it doesn't matter. So by the end of the day, I've lifted a ball of 50 pounds probably 30 times. Right? I also have a bar on the way in my basement, hanging from the roof, on the way to my garage, and I have to do pull-ups. So that's hacking. Right? So and you gamify it, and you reward yourself, and this is hacking. Threat actors are different, right? Threat actor is somebody who has nefarious intent. And I just want to give you an understanding of the level of what these gentlemen, my technical colleagues in the audience, are dealing with in the corporations that we help protect, including the university, to the level of threat that's already out there. Because I think awareness brings careful consideration to keystrokes. This is what we have to do. Right, as cybersecurity specialists, is bring, and this is what you're trying to do, right? Bring careful consideration to keystrokes, because this can bankrupt a company today. Right? That's it. So we have to be careful consideration to keystrokes, and as a species, we're a very forward motion species, right? So we click, we move forward. That's automatic for us. It's harder for us to pull back. We get up in the morning, we have forward-seeking eyes. They're not on the side of our face, right? So stopping somebody from clicking is quite a difficult thing to do. So a little bit of awareness. What's going on in Russia and the Ukraine right now? Now think, just prior to that invasion, we had the Colonial Pipelines hack. Now that was an interesting one. And remember Colonial Pipelines? What they actually did is they hacked the finance department, not the critical infrastructure of the actual pipeline. Now if you can't bill for fuel, you're not shipping fuel. So that's how they took down, very creative, that's how they took down or slowed down the entire eastern seaboard of the United States. A few hours, right? This is where I live in New Jersey. So a few hours. But that's how they were able to do that. Now this, what was it, Klopp? I can't remember if it was Klopp. The Klopp ransomware gang amassed $500 million in 3 years from ransomware. Just ransomware. That's $500 million in 3 years from the comfort of their own homes through keystrokes. So this will continue. Now the FBI managed to take them out. What does that mean? It means take down the gang, who will then reassemble under another title somewhere else, because they're out of our jurisdiction for bringing them over to the US. Because most of the traffic happens to be for things like ransomware and sabotage. I wonder if my colleagues would agree with me. Eastern Europe, Russia, we see a lot of the ransomware stuff. Industrial espionage, that's coming further from the east, right? So these are the trends that we tend to see in the marketplace. And I bring up the Russia-Ukraine war. The reason why is because the people who did the Colonial Pipelines hack, now is that not a useful skill set for someone like Putin or Zelensky to hire? Of course it is. So where do you think all these hackers are now? Working for these two guys, hacking each other. Where do you think they're going to go after they have had almost unlimited budget to create cyber weapons? What are they going to do after the war? They're going to take these cyber weapons, aren't they? They probably already have. They've probably already made copies of them, and they're launching attacks at the same time as fighting Russia and fighting the Ukraine. This is how it works now. So we have to be very careful of what's happening, because cyber warfare is actually quite old. The US, and I loved this, I thought it was brilliant. So this was when Iran shot down a drone over the Strait of Hormuz, which I think was in 2017, somewhere around there. And the US responded with a retaliatory cyber strike, which I thought was great. No boots on the ground, doesn't cost a penny, right? It's a virus that you've already made, okay? And what did they do? They took down the entire Iranian missile defense system for 2 weeks. So for 2 weeks, anybody could have lobbed a missile into the country, and no one did, which is why you're now on the right side, right? No one did. So just to say, hey, don't do that, because we can do this. Right. That, to me, is smart, right? It's the right thing to do. It shows strength, and it puts people in their place without blood, let's say. This is the reality of cybersecurity today. These are the conversations that my colleagues are engaged in when we're talking, especially to some of the larger corporations that are always targeted by these threat actors across the other side of the world. And so, there are currently 3.4 million cybersecurity jobs available to push these threat actors back in the world today. 800,000 of them in the United States. So I did a little math. I got it here. Because I was wondering, there's 800,000 jobs available, and it keeps growing, a little bit by little bit. I think last year it was 750, so it's bigger and bigger. It's like, we need more people. We're always screaming out for people. Are the universities providing? We know yours are. But then I went a little bit further, and it turns out, yes, this is how it works. I love this, by the way. This is how the system works. And so, right now, 34% of US adults have a university degree. Okay, this is from the US Bureau of Labor and Statistics. 34% of US adults have a university degree. So, there are 155 million working US adults, right? Working adults, people who are at work, 155 million. 34% of them have a degree. So that is 52 million people. Of those 52 million, 3% have a cybersecurity related skill set in the degree. 3% doesn't sound like much. That's actually 1.5 million graduates a year. That's great. That's actually what we need. We still have a little deficit of 800,000, but that's fantastic, right? That's what you're doing. That's what you're contributing in. So we're answering the problem so that we can push these threats back. And why are we the ones pushing the threats back? It makes us sound very defensive. We're not. We are so advanced as a nation when it comes to cybersecurity. Our next competitors if you want to, so Israel and England in that order, as a matter of fact, but we're that much further. Like the NSA really knows what they're doing. But we need more and more of these skill sets so that we can fill all of these various gaps. Okay, these skill sets get filled, and we call these people heroes. Alan Turing being a great hero, the inventor of the computer in World War II, a great movie, Imitation Game, right, with Benedict Cumberbatch, if you haven't watched it. Alan Turing, brilliant, right? I've spoken about him for a while, but the movie made him super famous. I work for a hero. Now look, I say that somewhat in jest, but in reality as well. So the gentleman that started this company, it's called Gil Shwed. He had a couple of partners. He started in a group, an organization called 8200, which is the Israeli version of the NSA. That's where our head office is. And as a child prodigy, he wrote a piece of code. Actually, I'm going to give you a tiny little bit of history lesson. You already probably know this. In 1983, DARPA, which is the Pentagon's research and development branch, invents TCP over IP, which is a language to move information over wires, and now wirelessly. That's pretty much it. Then in 1992, Tim Berners-Lee at CERN in Switzerland converted that into the World Wide Web, an academic, right? Honor, right? People love it. And then after that, Gil Shwed, actually it was before it was the World Wide Web, Gil Shwed actually created code for the Israeli military, and then when he left the military, rewrote the code as a commercial application and started this company called Checkpoint. And here it is today with 7,000 employees. And so a real hero that creates technology. How much time do I have, Jeff? I'm okay. I'm just a little conscious. I've got so many stories that I'm skipping over. We're okay? Okay, good. All right, that creates technology. The technology is called stateful packet inspection. And all it really is underneath the wires, underneath in the airwaves, how does that information, how does that photo of your meal or your cat, whatever it is you're sending, right, how does that actually appear? Well, all the ones and zeros that get broken down are just ones and zeros. And think about this. Have you ever thought about this? 256-bit encryption. We have actually beaten back threat actors with, again, academics, math. 256-bit encryption is just, what is that? That's 256 times 256? It's 256 to the power of 256, isn't it? Exactly. Which is trillions or billions? Trillions, I think. Trillions. 256 to the power of 256 trillions. And that's how we beat threat actors, because all we do is basically say, hey, there's trillions of combinations of what this scrambled sentence would be. I love my cat, right? We scramble it into trillions of combinations, and then we unscramble it when the photo comes back across this way, and the threat actor has to guess 1 out of trillions. Have you tried the lottery? Right. We're beating people because of academics, because of math. That's it. And really what Gil did is he put math into a program that would inspect those cat videos. And that's the technology that's been created. And since then, massive industry with so much technology. Right, since then, we've got now something like 1,000 cyber vendors, and he was one of the first. And over here, so that was what was called network security, connecting all the computers together. Over here in the United States, you had John McAfee making McAfee antivirus. And that was the endpoint security on your laptops. And so McAfee gave birth to that, and our guy, Gil Shwed, gave birth to network security. And these are the heroes that create technologies that help us slay dragons. So I'll give you an example. JP Morgan boasts, so Jamie Dimon boasts that they spend $700 million a year on cybersecurity. A year. It'll soon be $1 billion. I've got a friend that does what's called identity access management. So who are you? Do you get to come into the environment? It's a big bank, right? As a customer, as an employee. $250 million a year just for that. Just for that. Why do I mention that? So I mention that simply because scale. So we have something called an indicator of compromise. And an indicator of compromise is pretty much exactly as it sounds. Is there something that shows you that this piece of information has been compromised? It might not be true. an indicator of compromise. We have about 100 billion of them in our database that we compare all traffic to. And this is another place where we're going to go, future, but it's not too far away. Have you seen the deep fakes? Right. Have you seen them lately? They're really good. They're amazing deep fakes. And so actually this is an interesting thing that I converse with our customers, our chief information security officers. So for those that might aspire or have a track to learn about cybersecurity, the pinnacle of it, I suppose, is a chief information security officer. And the discussions I have are actually absolutely around this, because whose responsibility in a corporation is misinformation, right? That's an interesting one. So there's a wonderful little company called Boot Camp, that's right. It was a private company, had only 700 employees, and they made, I think, project management, data management type software. And the CEO, this was 4 years ago, sent out a note to the staff, 700, and said, hey, look, can you try not to use your email address for political activism, try not to use company branding for anything outside of company stuff. 60% of his employees walked out. Now why? How did he not know? How did he not have his pulse on the organization to know that whatever it is he was saying would cause this thing? Where people think that, everybody has the same problem. A company gives you a laptop and a phone, you think it's yours. It's actually not. And so how did he not know this? Misinformation. You're there to earn a living. I mean, I think that's reasonable enough. But the discourse he's engaged in is something that is very foreign and strange, losing 60% of your employees. Now, we can easily criticize that and say, well, the hell with them then. But that's not quite the answer either. I mean, sure, rebuild. But whose responsibility is misinformation? Cybersecurity is the control of information. And so is misinformation? Where does that fall? Because right now, we can't trust our media companies. We certainly can't trust the new media companies. Facebook, biggest media company in the world that doesn't produce any media, that can be manipulated, right? It can be manipulated by Cambridge Analytica, can be manipulated by them, and now we're learning from the Twitter files. Matt Taibbi's reporting, right? Follow that, Matt Taibbi, independent reporters. This is the way you got to go now, I'm afraid. It turns out that both government administrations lean on all these guys to try and influence public opinion. Well, of course, it's propaganda. This is just what they do. I mean, this is how life works. But it's at a scale now that we've never understood. So we're having interesting times. And dare I even touch upon culture wars. It's like, I've traveled all over the United States in the last 6 years. And people are gorgeous. They are. Everybody's gorgeous. We never see this. And so this, to me, is misinformation. So whose responsibility is this? It's ours. Right? It's ours. We find ourselves at a time and place. The time is now where we pay attention to this. The most important one right now is us in this dialogue. And the most important thing is to do good. What would that be? It would be to somehow clean up this misinformation. And I think there's a massive opportunity there for we're trying it, aren't we? The verified blue check mark? No. Yeah, exactly. That's not really working. And what about ChatGPT? I'm not quite ready for this. I've been asking it some questions. I've been asking, how would you hack an oil and gas company? It'll tell you. Sure, right? It'll tell you. You still have to have some skill set, but this is kind of interesting now. And another thing that my colleagues and customers combat, exploit kits. Now, this is a very old thing. So an exploit kit is, so think of these hackers that I've just mentioned to you, or threat actors. So these threat actors that I've mentioned to you, well, some of them maybe don't want to get involved in getting their hands real dirty, even though it's keystrokes. So what they do is they put a kit together, and they say, hey, if you want to launch an attack against your university, you've got a bad grade, all right, I'll show them, right? If you want to launch an attack against them, you can hit this button, that button, and this button, and then they'll get a DDoS attack. And that's an exploit kit, and you can rent them. Some of these things rent for thousands and thousands a month because they're lucrative, because you can do a ransomware attack, and if you're successful, you can get $1 million. Right, so this is the game on the dark web. And the dark web, 5, the dark 6, 10, thank you. We're getting there. I couldn't see one of the hands, I was like miming. One of these exploit kits, to give you an example, was hard-coded not to attack any former USSR country. Right, so who's making this stuff? You know, so, right. But this is on the dark web. Now, the dark web accounts for something like 96% of internet traffic. What you see is only 4% of internet traffic. Now, the dark web and the deep web accounts for 96%. There's a deep web and a dark web. Deep web, that would be like our intranet. You have it too. It's not open to the public, right? It's not catalogued and indexed by Google, right? You get to see that stuff. All of that is something like 96% of the internet. And then you've got the dark web. I now actually forget what percentage that is. And the rest of it is what we see. And that's massive. And that accounts for something like 3-4% of the internet. The rest of it is dark and deep web stuff. And the dark web stuff is crazy. Dark web stuff is really crazy. You know what's interesting though, and maybe I'll close with this. Actually, perfect. This is actually the last slide. I've got a couple of great stories to share with you. Yeah. Maybe we'll go with Eric Arthur Blair. We'll close with this one. This should be good fun. And so this is actually the 1930s. Aren't I all over the place with cybersecurity today, right? I really prepped for this one too, because with the checkpoint stuff, I can do those slides backwards, right? This is all the show and tell stuff. But this I was really enjoying, and I love coming down here. It always made me feel so welcome. So in the 1930s, there was a young British military officer in British-occupied Burma, and he was in charge of military security for this particular village. And one day he received a call, actually, a foot soldier came to his house. This was before telephones, rural part of Burma. And he received a call saying an enclosed elephant had gotten loose and was running rampage down the market street, upsetting carts, knocking into people, hurting people, causing a massive disturbance. And so, showing that the British had it under great control, Eric Arthur Blair grabbed his rifle and ran 4 miles on foot to where the commotion had set out. By the time he got there, everything had been settled. Now, a crowd of people had come along and they had really demanded that this British officer do something about this situation. So he tracked the elephant down to a field. It took him about an hour. This is a true story. And as he saw the elephant in the field, he saw it was grazing peacefully. You can see pictures of this actually on Google Images. Grazing peacefully in the field. It posed no threat to the village anymore, but by this time over 1,000 onlookers had come. And what these people were doing is essentially egging Eric Arthur Blair, Captain Blair, to take the shot and shoot this elephant. Now he knew that shooting it would be cruel and unnecessary. At the same time, he felt the, let's say, peer pressure from the group of people and wanted to uphold the British redcoat mighty power. And so what did he do? What do you think he did? Yeah. He shot the elephant. With rifles not being as strong as they are today, he had to shoot it again and again and again until it left a last final trumpet and fell to his knees. Eric Arthur Blair later adopted the name George Orwell. And he wrote about this in an essay called Shooting the Elephant. Now, in only the way someone like a great academic can do, he describes this shooting as one of the most regretful moments in his life. He describes the trumpeting of that elephant. It will bring tears to your eyes. And George Orwell then went on to become a spy in World War II. He then wrote in 1948, 1984, An Animal Farm, which I recommend everybody reread, right? Every sort of 10 years I break those two out. So much fun. And I think to myself, all of this great knowledge, when the printing press came out in 1440 to the 1600s, when you get Spinoza and Galileo and Newton and Shakespeare and the people that really changed this planet, but there was a 400-year history. Do you know what the most popular book that was printed in that 200-year, 400-year history was? The most popular book was How to Spot a Witch. I'm talking Spinoza and Galileo and How to Spot a Witch. We came out of the Dark Ages. And we lost something when we were in the Dark Ages. We actually had enlightenment before people. Do you know that? The Roman Republic was 700 years. They didn't have steel and technology, so we think they were inferior, but they had a lot of cool stuff, right? They invented a lot. There is a column in St. Peter's Basilica. Now, some Pope Pius the nonsense knocked it down and put St. Peter up there with some reeds, but it used to be the Emperor Nero, and in his hand was a globe. A round planet, and we lost that. Can you imagine? We knew the world was round 2,500 years ago, and then Christopher Columbus had to remind us. Right. Eric Arthur Blair becomes George Orwell, right? Guardians of truth, right? Academics. The institutions that I must say, there's a lot of pressure on institutions right now, academic institutions. And this is the narrative that people in industry need to hear, right? Because the heroes are the ones that guard the truth and discover it. So it is me that thanks you. That's it. Thank you. If you have any questions, I'd love to chat. I'm a chatterbox. Yeah. Yes.
With your understanding of history and understanding the scope of where we are now, what are your projections, or what do you think will happen in the future with where we are now?
With what?
With AI technology, with GChat, everything, all that it's culminating.
We went through several hundred years of how to spot a witch. That's what's happening right now. That's what's happening right now, isn't it? Right? Bigot! Career's over. Right? It's like taking a woman, binding her hands, throwing her in the river and saying if she floats, she's not a witch. It's the same thing. So we went through that, and then we came into the Renaissance. I was actually an ESL teacher when the internet first came into my vocabulary. So I was teaching English language. I was 26 years old. I had a baby. It was one of these moments in life, right? And they started rolling in all these computers into my lab, or my classroom lab, right? See, so I refer to it now. Into my classroom. Well, what's this? I'm teaching English, ESL. And they said, well, this is a thing that connects you to all other computers in universities at the time. I'm like, we're going to have world peace in 10 years. This is what I thought. At last, that's it. We're going to connect to everybody. We're going to realize we're all the same. It's going to be fine, right? Big group, kumbaya, my lord, right? We're going to hold hands. It's going to be great. We got kitten videos, didn't we? So we're going through that period now. The problem, so AI is not a thing yet. That's not a thing. That's still if this then that. Actually, so it's really cool, but it's actually quite rudimentary from a technical perspective. It's just so much data, and it's been catalogued really well. That's really cool that they've done there, but it's not thinking for itself. I'm with Elon Musk on this one. I don't like the idea of a computer thinking for itself, because it's that much smarter. Right. What they're doing with Neuralink. You familiar with Neuralink, right? Yeah, you're academics, you're with Neuralink. Yeah, I don't like that. So to answer your question, I'm actually not sure, but I'm optimistic to think that we got through the how to spot a witch nonsense, and we're here today. This is actually really cool compared to that. I think that it won't take us a few hundred years, it should just take us decades. It might hurt along the way. There you go, not the most optimistic answer. I love the gentleman in the pink.
What is your opinion about the capacity of the various powers to interfere with the grids of their enemies? And do we have the same kinds of capabilities that another country, like, I won't name it.
Name it doesn't matter, we're all big kids. Yeah, sure. So we do, and much better, right? Our NSA is absolutely brilliant. Don't worry, we're in a really strong position. We're incredibly strong. I'll tell you a real story. This is all public information. These are just facts. We can be big kids here, can't we? Right? We can talk about countries. So we hang on. This was actually in retaliation. What did they? I can't remember what we did something to annoy these people. But the Iranian cyber guards. This was in 2013, long time ago. They took down the Bowman Avenue Dam, 19 miles north of Manhattan. You can Google all this. The only reason they weren't successful in causing a flood is because the Bowman Avenue Dam, it was called, the sluice gate had been dismantled for repair that day. We were lucky. We also think that they were probably targeting the Bowman Avenue Dam near Chicago, which is a big dam, right? That would have really caused a problem. So they were actually successful doing that. Now, that was in 2013, and we've learned a lot of lessons since then. That's what we call critical infrastructure. And in those days, critical infrastructure was what we call air-gapped. There was no connection between those real critical things and the internet, because we don't want people in a faraway land doing these kinds of things. But this is done all the time. Our utilities over here are under constant attack. If you go to checkpoint.com, I wonder if what the backslash would be, but we have what's called a threat map. And you can see it looks like the NORAD, right? You've seen the NORAD, right? It looks like that. So there's attacks happening all the time. And here's the good news: you don't even know about it, right? It means it's being taken care of. I mean, I'm not quite doing this, but I'm certainly doing this. I'm not the hero, I'm the spokesman for this, right? These other people are the heroes.
Do we
But
retaliate?
what's that?
Do we retaliate?
If we have to, yeah, but this is kind of government policy stuff and military, right? So Cyber Command sits on top of the NSA. General Nakasone is the guy that he's the one that did the strike after the drone over the Strait of Hormuz. He's been actually in charge for a long time now. And so the NSA is supposed to be intelligence gathering from overseas, but the Cyber Command make the decision on what to do with it. Yeah, and we do, of course. There's a big war happening. This is tip of the spear stuff I'm just coming to, but this is like, I don't want to sound too heroic here, and again, I'm just the spokesperson, but this is tip of the spear stuff. It's happening all the time so that the big disasters hopefully don't happen. Yes, sir?
Can you speak more a little bit about blockchain consuming the internet and what that means for our future?
Well, in a sense, I wanted to scare you because people aren't paying attention to blockchain enough, right? And so I'm going to be out of my depth, so I'm going to make some recommendations. There's a guy called Michael Saylor. So if you go onto YouTube and go Robert Breedlove, Michael Saylor, you're going to learn about Bitcoin. And Bitcoin is the sort of ultimate way to learn about blockchain. So I'll give you an example. A friend of mine has got this company. So banks right now, when I'm going to loan you money, so from my bank account to you, right, I'm going to take my $100, I'm going to put it in your bank account. Happens like that. But in actual fact, the reconciliation of that account leaving my bank going to your bank happens days later. And do you know what? It's a human being. Can you believe that? It's actually still a human being. Banks are really behind. And they sort of should be, because you don't want that technology to be too bleeding edge, because then it can be hacked, right? But it's pretty archaic. And so what happens is a human being looks on a spreadsheet and goes, yeah, did this leave this guy's account? Yeah, it did. And this one, click, approve. Now, that can all be done. A spreadsheet is the blockchain. You get that, right? Right, that can all be done on the blockchain. So now what this man's done is he's taken out that middle person. Now that's worth $15 a click. So what? There's billions of those transactions a day. So blockchain is going to manage billions of transactions better than a human will, and will replace all of that work. Now, don't be fearful. There's a lot of people that start talking about universal basic income at this point. People aren't going to have nothing to do. It was like when Henry Ford invented the car. He said, if I'd have asked people what they wanted, they'd have said a faster horse. They complained because they thought it would put them out of business, the horse manure people. We don't want this. It's going to put us out of business. I love my job. There was so much more work making cars. There's going to be so much more work doing other things, right, than doing click, click. So anyway, that's what I mean. So that's one example of a multi-billion-dollar industry with thousands of people that will disappear like that. Blockchain is eating everything that the internet does and making it immutable. And I think that's ultimately what's going to save us with these deep fakes and with the blue check mark kind of stuff. There's going to be something where we are tokenized. Right? Sounds strange, doesn't it?
I had a quick question. When you spoke at SC Decoded, you told a great story about the robot vacuums. Could you share that?
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely. And so I have at home a Roomba vacuum cleaner, you know, the little Roomba that drives around and does a mildly mediocre job of vacuuming up all the crumbs from my dog. But anyway, it's a gimmick and it's fun, and we have this thing that drives around, the cat sits on it. we have a group of what we call offensive cyber operators. And these people, in a sense, sort of hack the hackers. Now, you can't really say that. I actually said that at NYU. This was at the Journal of Law and Cyber Warfare. And a gentleman called Colonel Gary Korn stood up in the middle of my talk and said, I want everybody to know. Now, he was the chief judge advocate for the NSA. Right? The kind of person you tremble when you meet these men and women. And he said, I want you to know that's illegal. You can't do that. I said, they're in Israel. Just so you know. So we have this group of people. They certainly don't do anything against the law, but they certainly go onto the dark web every day, the dark web. They assume an avatar or a persona of a terrorist or a criminal, and they just hang out with horrible, nasty people. What are you doing? Now, this one nasty person, I've got maps. What are you doing with these maps? Well, they're for sale. Maps of what? Right? It wasn't geography, it was maps of buildings, like this one, kind of, as a matter of fact. Maps of people's homes categorized as high net worth individuals. Maps of people's homes who are maybe adjudicators. What this threat actor had done was LG, the manufacturer, have this competitive Roomba vacuum cleaner. Now, they decided, for whatever reason, to put cameras on it. Actual cameras, not just sensors where the walls are, cameras. And so what this person had managed to do, and LG, by the way, I should mention this, you know how that vacuum cleaner goes around the floor and then it drives back and it plugs itself in. Now, what it's actually doing is it's mapping your room. It maps it for efficiency, good, so that the battery can have a longer life. Great. What's it doing with the map? LG was sucking all those maps up into its cloud. Why? Because people love data. They think they can get rich from data, right? They hold on to data. So everybody's holding on to this data. And so essentially what they had given this threat actor was maps of high net worth people's houses. So perhaps if you wanted to kidnap somebody's child and ransom them, you would have an exact layout of their property. Perhaps you were engaged in industrial espionage. This happens all the time, industrial espionage, big companies, especially aviation companies, military contractors. Now you've got a map of their floor, right? And so in this case, our offensive cyber operators were sort of busted. You know, this threat actor was like, yeah, you're either a spook or you're someone, let Check Point go away. So we ended up reverse engineering this, and they made one of these things, and there's a video on YouTube somewhere. If you go to Check Point's website, you'll see it, where they drove it into our CEO's office with the cameras on it, just to show him, right, you know, that we can map this out and we can see this thing. And then what we do is we work with those manufacturers like LG, and I'm pleased to tell you they worked with us really well. But look, they have culpability, certainly, but they're not a cybersecurity company. So it's like, look, if you don't need the data, don't take it, right? Leave it. But if you're going to take the data, protect it, and then call a cybersecurity company. So we work with them. We usually have about 24 hours. We call it a honorable disclosure time or something like that. Responsible disclosure time, exactly. Yeah. So that's the vacuum cleaner story. You like that one, did you?
Interesting fact, do you know who acquired Roomba?
No.
Amazon.
Did they? Well, Amazon's very interesting. I met with the BISO. So this is a new title, a Business Information Security Officer. So I met with the Business Information Security Officer for Amazon. This was last year sometime. He said his main challenge is this. We have such creative people, real wizards, the kind of people you're graduating, and they're making this wearable technology. Right? So one's like a wristband that pulses and calms people down. Right? Other wearable technology which can constantly, like I've got this super watch. So this watch tells VO2 max, and it tells things I just don't know. And if my doctor needs information, I just send him the app. And he has a 6-month history of how my heart's doing, right? My oxygen rate, amazing, right? Now, the business information officer said the problem at Amazon is this. All these guys are creating these amazing technologies, and they're doing it as fast as they can. They don't want to wait for security, because security is going to slow them down. So this is a gap that you can help us fill, as a matter of fact, as academics. You've got industry creating these amazing toys like this. Now they have deadlines, they have KPIs and Christmas bonuses, right? And if they don't get this thing out by January 1st, they're not getting their bonus. So I'm not talking to a security guy, because this person's going to slow me down, make me jump through a bunch of security protocols. Good, right? So how can we solve that problem? How can we solve the problem of of industry rushing ahead to create things and us making sure, and we are actually solving this problem, we have software that chases developers, if you think of it this way, and scans for secrets. So as they are typing code, if we find that the code has malicious intent, or there's things like credit card numbers, social security numbers, we can scan for those things and we can grab the code and pull it back. But these are the problems that we need to solve. These are big problems, because as soon as a watch like this goes on the marketplace, do you hear about this one? This is brilliant. So the US military issued all of the US Marines with a Fitbit. Yeah, right, you read this one, didn't you, mate? With a this is years ago, with a Fitbit. Some high school kid, for his project in Australia, was goofing around. I don't quite know what he did, but he found out where the location of all the Fitbit users were, and then he discovered the black ops sites for the CIA that the US Marines were guarding around the world because they're wearing a Fitbit. Black ops sites, like actual CIA sites where dangerous special stuff happens, and identified from a Fitbit. So they recalled all these Fitbits, took them off the Marines. Right, because people are rushing ahead with this, and so these are the problems that we're imagine that this was during the times of Osama bin Laden, right? This was back then. So imagine the wrong people find out, and the professor for this kid picks up the phone. Hello, Department of Justice and Department of Defense of America. Can you imagine making that call? Yeah, right. Any other questions before we wrap? This has been lovely. Thank you for your hospitality so much. Thank you.